具体的なエビデンスとして残っておりますので、それを集めたものでございます。で、これだけはたまたま合成したものでございますけれども、要するにペンタゴンにこれだけの幅の飛行機が突っ込んでるんです。で、757っていうのはかなり大型の飛行機です。幅が38メートル。ところが、実際ご覧になって分かるようにですね、この飛行機が突入したにもかかわらず、これだけの穴しか実は開いていないと。これだけの幅の実は穴が開いていないと。になるのか。それからこういったことが日本においてもですね、あり得るとすれば、あるいは日本が同盟としておりますアメリカの防空体制がこういうことであると。
The question was, we had 4 war games going on September 11th, and the question that I tried to pose before the secretary had to go to lunch was whether or not the activities of the 4 war games going on September 11th actually impaired our ability to respond to the attacks.
The answer to the question is no, it did not impair our response. In fact, General Eberhart, who was then the commander of North American Aerospace Defense Command, as he testified in front of the 9/11 Commission, I believe he told them that it enhanced our ability to respond, given that NORAD didn't have the overall responsibility for responding to the attacks today. That was an FAA responsibility.
The most impressive for me was the absence of aerial defense, which is absolutely unbelievable. And the fact that President Bush and Condoleezza Rice declared many times that they could not provide such kind of attack, while there is a proof they were informed that this possibility existed.
Think tank that Donald Rumsfeld and Dick Cheney are both part of. Are you implying?
And Paul Wolfowitz. Those who have organized the 9/11, in my opinion, are people knowing very well the geopolitical situation, the geostrategical situation of the world, and the situation of energy, climate change, financial crisis. These people have clear in mind what was then the future of the world. They are so powerful because in the first point they have the control of the media system. They produced 9/11, an event which had no precedent in our history, in the man history. They spoke in the same moment to 2 billion people.
Oui, je pense qu'un certain nombre d'oligarchies sont prêtes de manière occulte, évidemment, tout en faisant la promotion des droits de l'homme, de la démocratie pour le bon peuple, sont tout à fait capables d'utiliser des moyens machiavéliques. Comme ça marche et que les peuples sont dupes, qu'ils sont trompés, que les oligarchies dominantes font en sorte qu'ils restent dans l'ignorance de la réalité, pourquoi n'irait-il pas plus loin à chaque fois ? Et donc c'est simplement un changement d'échelle et pour arriver au 11 septembre. La bipolarité, ce n'est plus le communisme contre les États-Unis, c'est au fond le nouveau monde libre, c'est encore le monde occidental. Et puis le nouvel ennemi, le nouvel axe du mal, cette fois c'est l'islamisme et tous les pays qui seraient suspects d'aider ce fondamentalisme. Toute cette interprétation binaire, bipolaire, m'a toujours paru suspecte parce qu'évidemment il s'agit d'une vision du monde qui correspond complètement aux intérêts américains. Alors c'est un des immenses paradoxes de cette affaire, c'est que quelqu'un comme moi, je vais être accusé de quoi? D'être au fond un simplificateur, un conspirationniste, c'est-à-dire quelqu'un qui réduirait la réalité du monde à quelque chose de simpliste. Or c'est exactement le contraire. Ce qui est simpliste, c'est la version officielle. C'est le fait que le monde se réduirait entre le bien et le mal et que le méchant serait immédiatement l'islamiste qui aurait été capable de tout organiser, etc. C'est entre parenthèses une magnifique théorie du complot, très simpliste, très binaire. Bon, l'hypothèse moi que je défends depuis longtemps et qui est attestée par l'histoire dans de nombreux cas, c'est que le terrorisme c'est d'abord un fait étatique, c'est d'abord le fait de services de renseignement qui ont la volonté, la vision, les moyens, la logistique pour mener à bien ce type d'opération. Mener à bien ces opérations en utilisant justement les illuminés, les idéologues, les fanatiques, qui existent bien sûr.
testifies in Moussawi's trial, there were 70 emails to and from headquarters in this short 2-week span. And one of the telephone calls in August, I'm not sure of the exact date, 23rd, 24th, 28th maybe, one of the telephone calls, the acting supervisor says on the phone with the headquarters supervisor, in order to try to alert him, he says, "Don't you know this is a guy who could fly into the World Trade Center?" Stood right on 9/11 when, you know, we see planes flying into buildings. And as soon as planes fly, you know, you see this on the television, it's like, oh no, this is the case here. It's immediate. It's that quickly that it's recognized.
Now, just in the same period, I think it's just a few weeks before, if my memory serves me right, Condoleezza Rice gets a memo which says bin Laden plans to attack America. And even though she tried to suggest it was some sort of historical reference, if you read the memo, the last point of the memo is quite clear that there's strong suspicion there are actually plans afoot to attack America.
Condoleezza
Rice venait juste de faire une déclaration.
I don't think anybody could have predicted that these people would take an airplane and slam it into the World Trade Center.
Un sac pour un bobard. Quand on connaît le travail fait par les agents, quand on pense aux traductions qui avaient été faites, oser dire « nous n'avions aucune information spécifique », mais quel mensonge éhonté. Et de la part du conseiller aux affaires de sécurité nationale en plus. Oser dire ça, alors que tous les dossiers lui arrivent.
In fact, the attack didn't occur for another, this was August 6th, and it occurred over a month later. But we thought that the attack could come as early as, you know, the 3rd or 4th week of August. We thought it was imminent. And so, well, he probably did also. Everybody was doing it. See, this is the thing that, I mean, no offense, but there was so much discussion about this attack. Everybody was talking about it. George Tenet had some meetings. Other analysts had meetings at the White House that Condoleezza Rice has, like, conveniently pretended didn't happen. And I think that the hijackers got a lot of help. They got a lot of help. I'd like to answer this on a couple of levels. First of all, the CIA has a long track record of doing false flag operations on itself. And one of the reasons that I may be more trustworthy is that I was an asset, not a CIA director. My CIA handler received $13 million tax-free. Didn't even have to pay $1 in taxes. Is that not the sweetest thing you've ever heard in your life? From the 9/11 investigation of emergency appropriations that were intended for the Iraq to secure Iraq's cooperation. And the government was so, if you do a little research on my story, you'll find the government was so threatened by what I was going to say, and they were like, they tried to detain me up to 10 years. They actually petitioned the court for the right, on the Patriot Act, for the right to detain me up to 10 years in prison with no trial and no hearing.
The jet fuel can't get hot enough to make an entire building just collapsing on itself like that. What a lot of people I don't think realize is that the majority of the jet fuel was burnt up instantly in the big fireball, and it was gone. The fires that were left were office furnishings and carpet and things like that. A lot of things in these kind of buildings have to be fire resistant by nature. It's required by code. So there really isn't a whole lot of fuel in there to begin with. But the jet fuel argument just doesn't cut it with me, because when that big fireball came out of both the towers, that was the jet fuel, and it pretty much was over at that point. And NIST even acknowledged that the rest of the fuel that was left over, unburned, would have burned up within 10 or 15 minutes after the initial explosion, which would have resulted in normal office fires with a lot of paper.
Symmetry is the smoking gun. Those buildings could not have fallen in perfectly level. It's as if you take a level with a bubble in the center and watch those buildings come down, and that bubble will stay centered the whole way down. And that cannot happen with an airplane hitting one side of the building. It cannot happen that when you have asymmetric damage, you will get a perfectly symmetrical collapse. And all you need to do is look at the videos and see that. Then you have to be willing to trust what you saw and call out the lie.
So one of the things that really interested me is how quickly the Tower 7 fell. I'm told it fell within 7 seconds approximately from top to bottom. This building was built in the mid-'80s apparently and met all the known codes at the time. Buildings just don't behave like that. If floors fall, they tend to fall and are braced by the floor directly beneath it. And there's some delay there. And then the next floor falls with 2 floors, and there's some more delay. Apparently there must have been some reason why the acceleration of the floors above fell in such a brief time.
Obvious hypothesis for anyone looking at the films, and that was a lot of people, is that the buildings came down because there was very carefully controlled demolition with high explosives that had been planted many weeks, if not months, before.
Findings of the nanothermite in the dust is unambitious proof that something was going on September 11th, which was unusual. And it is a finding which cannot be accounted for by any other explanation, any other process going on than this was deliberately put in the towers for the purpose of bringing them down.
Oral histories of the emergency personnel taken down in late 2001 and early 2002, there are over 100 individuals who make comments about seeing, hearing, and feeling explosions in those buildings. These oral histories were documented well before NIST started their World Trade Center investigation in September 2002. This testimony should have caused the presumption that there was a good chance explosive residue would be found and justified testing for it, rather than the opposite. On what basis would NIST have presumed there was little chance of explosive residue to be found, and that it would be a waste of time and money?
Any implosion, you don't hear one massive boom sound. What you do hear is smaller explosions going off, which leads up to the implosion of the building. Go back and listen to the tapes of the police officers and people on the ground, and the firemen as well. They're reporting exactly what I would expect. You're hearing boom, 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 boom as these different floors start to fail. So again, what I'm hearing from what people were there is exactly what I would have expected.
And you put all these things together, and it is absolutely obvious to me that we've been lied to, that the government's official story is physically impossible, and that's why we absolutely need a new investigation of 9/11.
Our purpose in Afghanistan. Why do our men and women still fight and die there? The terrorists who planned and supported the 9/11 attacks are in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And if the Afghan government falls to the Taliban or allows Al-Qaeda to go unchallenged, that country will again be a base for terrorists who want to kill as many of our people as they possibly can.
The notion that we are in Afghanistan to make our country safer is just complete bullshit. I'm sorry to use the language, but it is bullshit.
Most people who continue to believe the Bush-Cheney conspiracy theory about about 9/11 are simply unaware of dozens and dozens of facts that contradict this theory.
Well, people don't want to believe it because it means everything around them is fake. Yeah. And they look at their world and they look and they think, well, how can I be living in a world where somebody like that is doing what they're doing? And they don't want to believe it because it makes them uncomfortable.